When the video will reach this time, you're gonna be very angry at me. But you need to know the context, so let's start the video. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you here. Welcome to my new channel. This video is gonna be released when this channel still has 0 subscribers. So let me introduce myself. If you know me from before, then you know I'm an ex-pro player, caster, and a content creator. But if you don't know, then let me just quickly run it down. I'm an ex-pro player that started his journey with digital card games in 2014 as a Hearthstone pro player for a few years. Then I quit Hearthstone because I didn't like it anymore, and I swapped to Fortnite, where I was also a professional player. Yes, I know. In the meantime, I was also casting PUBG, but that's not important. After that, I was professionally playing TFT and casting it as well. And after that, for the past 6 years, I've been involved with the Valorant scene, where I was a professional analyst for the VCT European broadcast for many years, but also create content on my Twitch, Kick, and also YouTube, which is mostly about education, game knowledge, how to play better, how to min-max. And that's why I love card games. I played card games my entire life, and when I heard about Riftbound coming out, I definitely wanted to try it out. So this video is gonna be my opinion and about the good and the bad, because there's a lot of bad as well, but I think the good outweigh the bad. So I'm gonna be talking about Riftbound today in comparison to the other card games that I played in my entire life, and to some degree some esports titles as well. I started playing card games in the 90s with Magic the Gathering, I think in 1995, maybe 1996. After that, of course, Doom Trooper, Dark Eden, Alien vs Predator. Shortly after that, Pokemon. There were so many card games that I'm not even gonna mention, but I would like to focus on the ones that I played the most lately and why I chose them and why I'm swapping from them to Riftbound, because I'm not gonna be playing other card games right now. I'm gonna go fully into Riftbound because I like it so much. The content that I'm going to be recording for this channel is going to be aiming at people who like to learn. And it's not like I'm an expert already. We're going to be learning alongside each other because I'm going to be recording for myself too. I'm going to be discussing the deck choices. I'm going to be discussing the combo choices. I'm going to be discussing the side deck choices. I'm going to be discussing my decisions during the game. I'm going to be live streaming some gameplay. I'm going to be doing pre-recorded content as well. It's all about growing as a player. So if you look for content that is going to be aiming at that, that's going to be my channel. I'll be very honest with you, when I started playing Hearthstone, it was an opportunity to start a esports career for the next years, and I was successful at it, so I'm very grateful that Hearthstone existed because that was my Kickstarter for my own esports career. But the game itself was not great. I was hoping that as a digital game, it's gonna be having a lot of erratas and changes to the games to balance it out. That was never the case for the first years of Hearthstone existence. So I was pretty burned out with Hearthstone pretty fast because the game wasn't that complicated. The decision making was very minimal. The interactions were very minimal. And that's something that I feel like in card games, you want to feel that you're interacting with the person that is playing against you. You are playing against the person, not against the PC. You're not playing a solitaire, right? So you want to have that back and forth with the opponents. So after I quit Hearthstone and I ventured into other games for many years, at some point, I felt that I want to play again a card game because I was missing that itch when it comes to 1v1 interaction. So I looked into potential card games that I would like to go back to because Magic was just not it. Like, I hate the land system in Magic and it always turned me away. Like, I was having comebacks to Magic on and off. For a few years, I was playing Magic, then I was quitting because the lands were just too much. And then the cycle continued for like a few months. So I quit Magic, I feel like 5 or 6 times. But my friend from my hometown introduced me to Flesh and Blood. And Flesh and Blood is a fantastic game. And Flesh and Blood was scratched that itch when it comes to competition, when it comes to complexity, and also the decision making and the interaction that you do during the game. I love the game, but it's also not a traditional card game as it has completely different rules than any other card game that I've ever played. When it comes to systems, I would say that Flesh and Blood is probably the most unique game that I played because it's straight up completely different than its protoplast, which is Magic. Magic is the first ever card game to ever exist, and well, of course, collectible card games, right? The fantasy card games. And Flesh and Blood has nothing to do with Magic, essentially. So that was very unique and a very big learning experience. I enjoyed it a lot. But at some point when my second daughter was born, I just couldn't sacrifice as much time to learn Flesh and Blood as I wanted to. And the game is so complicated, and maybe not complicated, but complex, that you need to understand very very, very small details in it to be good at Flesh and Blood. When I couldn't sacrifice that amount of time to be happy with it, and also my main Lexi was essentially banned because it was relegated to the Live and Legend format, when I couldn't even play lately because my second daughter was born, so I missed out on the moment when Lexi was the most powerful character in the game, I felt like, you know what, I don't really want to play the game anymore. I still have my collection, but I don't really play Flesh and Blood. And after that, Star Wars Unlimited came. And in my opinion, and maybe this is going to be a shock for many of you, but in my opinion, Star Wars Unlimited has probably the best system out of any card game that I ever played. I think it's phenomenal. The system, when it comes to like having simultaneous turns, right? So we imagine that we're just playing something that is kind of like Magic, kind of like Hearthstone. We are fighting with units to destroy our bases, but instead of one arena, we have two arenas. There's space and ground, so you have ground units and space units, and there's no my turn, your turn. There's only one turn. We draw at the same time, we get lands at the same time because we just put mana on the ground, and then we take the turn back and forth. So essentially there's no instance, there's no reaction spells, there's no like, you know, in reaction to your spell I'm gonna do something, because it's action for action. I do one move, you do your move, and so on. Unlike the surface level, many people were saying that this game has no interaction because there's no way of interacting instantly with spells, like there's no chain, there's no stack, but the game itself has so much interaction that it becomes the most interactable game that I ever played when it comes to card games. You have to think ahead so much, and it's very low RNG because of that, and I think it's a fantastic game. But it has many drawbacks when it comes to like the way that the developer treats the game, and overall the promises, the economics of it are not good. I still think it's a great game, but outside of the game itself, unfortunately, it's failing on almost every single front. So I was very happy to hear that Riftbound is on the horizon, because it seems to be fixing a lot of issues that I've seen with other card games. So now that this convoluted intro is done, we can talk about the Riftbound, the good and the bad. Let's start with the good. The good, for me, the most important thing, it's actually not connected to the game itself, but actually it is. So the amount of people that play the game is something that motivates me to actually play the game. Because when I go to a local weekly just tournament and I see 20, 30 people, that's incredibly motivating to play the game, because more and more people you get to know, you can talk about the game, it's interesting to just hang out, and it's just nice to see many new faces coming in. In Warsaw, we had a local tournament with over 70, I'm Polish by the way, 70 people there, like I think it was 74 if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me in the comments, which is absolutely mental when it comes to the amount of people that played the game. I have never heard about a card game that ever had that many people at just a normal weekly tournament. It's insanity. And I say that this is not connected to the game, but actually it's a lie. It is connected to the game because the game itself is good, so more people want to play it. If the card game would be bad, not many people would like to play it, right? So it's kind of connected. But for me, this is the main motivator to go out of my home and play in a weekly tournament with real people. Second most important thing about Riftbound for me are the systems. The systems are the fundamentals of a game, the things that create the game. So we have like the win condition, that you need to get 8 points by controlling the locations, the battlefields. The second system would be the mana system, and the third system would be the combat system, and so on. So those fundamental rules in the game, in my opinion, are a very good base to create a good game. So when it comes to the win condition, I have this observation that maybe is wrong because I'm a newer player, but it feels so weird and different from other card games. So for example, when you play Magic the Gathering or Star Wars Unlimited and you want to win the game, you just have to destroy the base or the opponent's mage as soon as possible. So when you play creatures, when you're playing an aggro deck, you have this compounding or escalating amount of damage that you're gonna be dealing each round, and if your opponent doesn't stop you from playing that many creatures, right, they're gonna get their head smashed in even faster than they anticipated. Now that is not really possible in Riftbound, which is peculiar, but also very interesting to think about. So because you can only get essentially 2 points per round, unless there are of course different type of like ways of getting points from cards, but you're kind of limited to getting just 2 points per round, which means that if you get 2 points per round, you're gonna play at least 5 turns minimum, right? Because on first turn you're probably not gonna get any points. If you get 2 points on second, that's 2, then 4, then 6, then 8. So you have minimum of 5 turns. In other card games, you can lose the game faster if the aggro deck just gets quickly out of control, right? So there's like this different type of tempo that we have in this game, and I find it very peculiar because more creatures doesn't equal more points, which equals that in other card games. So that is very cool and kind of changes the way that you look at the game, even though we have the same kind of archetypes. We have the aggro, we have the mid-range, we have the control decks. Well, let's I don't know if we have like a pure control deck yet, but it's first expansion. There's gonna be a lot of experience gathering and like trying to you know, find solutions to stuff. So I very much like the win condition because it's so different from other card games. Next one, let's talk about the runes, the things that you use to pay for your cards, which is something that almost every card game has, and I like the system in Riftbound. If you don't know how it works, you have 12 runes in your deck that create a separate deck. Every turn, you get 2 of those runes to your board, essentially building up your potential mana. If you go first, you have 2, then 4, then 6, then 8. If you go second, you start with 3, then you have 5, 7, 9. So it's asymmetrical, which is very nice because it changes the patterns of the game potentially. Also, there are 2 colors, but you can pay for cards with any of the colors, but you have to pay the power cost, which means that you sometimes, of course, for not every single card, but when the card is more powerful, not only you have to tap the runes for mana, but you also have to recycle, which means that you put one of those runes back at the bottom of the deck, of the rune deck, by paying the additional cost of that card, which is, as I mentioned before, very similar. The entire system is very similar to the one from One Piece, when you essentially have 10 dons, 10 cards in your separate mana deck, and you get exactly 2 or 3 the same way that in Riftbound, and you also recycle them at the bottom of the deck, but they also have an additional way of buffing your creatures, which is not found in Riftbound. But in general, the mana system is almost completely lifted from One Piece, and I think that's okay. I think they improved a little bit of the system because of the different colors and the way that you have to balance building your character around that. But how does this compare to other card games? So overall, when it comes to the Riftbound system, when it comes to the mana, the runes, I think it's a big improvement over many games, including Magic, where I think Magic is completely unwelcoming to new players with its land system. It's very archaic, has a lot of RNG involved, and that's the biggest problem for me. I hate it when a game is decided by someone not being able to play cards like at all because they don't have mana or they have only mana, and the game just doesn't count. When I travel to a tournament, I don't want to lose or win games because we don't play the game. That's one of the main things, main critiques of any card game that I ever played. I don't want to have like 20-30% of non-games. And that's not going to happen with this system in Riftbound, which is a big plus. Now, I still think that Flesh and Blood and Star Wars Unlimited have better systems when it comes to the mana. Flesh and Blood has completely unique system because each card has different functions. In each card in Flesh and Blood can be used for blocking, paying for as a mana, and attacking or playing. So there's like modular cards on each card, which you don't have in other card games most of the time, but it's very unique. And it's very complicated because of that, and it's like pitch stacking is a strategy that you have to learn while playing Flesh and Blood with most of the decks. Now, Star Wars Unlimited, on the other hand, has a system which I think is the best system out of any card game I have ever played, because you can play any of your cards face down as a land, and then you just use them during the game, and they can still also be sometimes used as a normal card as it was in your hand because of some mechanics. But in general, it has like this big skill check when it comes to knowing which card will be sacrificed as a land, because then you don't get to play it. So you have additional decision making that you have to do in both Flesh and Blood, in Star Wars Unlimited, which I think is a huge factor in how complex those games are, and also how much of RNG is basically deleted from the game because you take those decisions yourself. In One Piece, in Riftbound, and in Magic, you don't have this kind of decision making because the mana can only do mana, right? So you have the runes, you have the dons, you have the lands. So I think that is something that Flesh and Blood and Star Wars Unlimited win over the other card games, but at the same time, because of that, I don't think it's when the game has not enough RNG involved in it, that's also a problem. The game has to be sometimes won by a worse player just because he got lucky, which doesn't really happen that often in Flesh and Blood or Star Wars Unlimited, which are very focused on limiting the amount of randomness in their games. The next system I would like to talk about is the actual fights and the movement system, so the battle system. And we have to talk about it in context of also the movement system, because it's all connected. Moving between base to the battlefields and then initiating showdowns, which are the battles, is all a decision that you make together in the same system, even though they are not like completely connected. Now, when I was reading the instruction of Riftbound and the manual, and I was learning about the game, I thought that the battles are gonna be much easier to navigate than the reality. And that's great, because I thought the game would be very simple when I was reading the rules. But just after just one game, I was like, oh, you know what? This is actually way more complex than it is on the surface. So there's something there to master. And the more I played, I realized that this is gonna be the main skill gapper between people. Not the deck building, not the meta reading, but actual movement in the game, decision making in the game, which is for me very important, because it means that you might still have like some rock paper scissors kind of meta game, but most of the decisions made in the game are gonna be able to make you win a game against the weaker opponents. But the stronger opponents, the excellent players, will actually min-max those patterns and try to outplay themselves based on the information that they have about the metagame and in general, like the fundamentals of the gameplay. What is important to understand in Riftbound's movement and combat system is that the sequencing is also so important, but also understanding like, do I want to attack with all of my creatures into this location? Do I want to retreat from a location? Do I want to hold it? Do I want to attack? All of those decisions is like a decision tree that really branches out. And the more branching out there is, the more good and bad decisions a player can make. The more decisions a player can make, the bigger the skill gap will be between a worse player and a better player, which reduces the amount of randomness that you will have in the game. And I feel like Riftbound has the right amount of randomness in it, connected with the right amount of decisions that you're gonna have to get to do to be a good player. When you combine two of those, suddenly the game becomes more casual friendly, but also more professional friendly, because you're gonna be able to outplay the worst opponents, but at the same time, sometimes you're just gonna lose because it's a card game and you're not gonna draw your answers. And I think that's fine. I think when a game has a combination of those two, that game will succeed. But in the past, there were games like, for example, Versus System that were so like they were avoiding randomness so much. Basically, the game was being won by 15 people on the planet, always the same names, and that killed the game, because you have to get some randoms, you have to get some chance for every person to enjoy the game and not just feel like they get outplayed and completely smashed every single time they play the game. And I feel like that's also one of the things that kind of turned me away from Flesh and Blood, which has very heavy rock paper scissors meta, when there's so many just completely opposite matchups on the spectrum, when you feel like even if you play well, you're not gonna win. That's also a bad thing, and I hope that's something that we're not gonna see in the future in Riftbound. But something tells me that with the amount of like movement and game like mechanical like battles between creatures on the game is gonna not make it as much visible in this game as it is in other card games that I played in the past, which is, in my opinion, a good thing. Okay, then the really next good thing about Riftbound is gonna be really weird, because I played the last 2 years Star Wars Unlimited. In that game, the interaction is so high that you cannot really do any cool stuff because it gets shut down. Like, think about it. Like, because in Star Wars Unlimited, I do a play, you do a play, I do a play, you do a play, and you can never interrupt someone, but you can interact with them after, like, turn after turn. You cannot play a card into a card in most of the cases. So if you want to do something cool like a buff a unit and then attack with them immediately because your opponent is tapped out of mana and they cannot interact, that is not possible in Star Wars Unlimited. You always have to think ahead of what the opponent was going to do with his next move. You have a new variable. Every time someone makes a move, there's a new variable because your opponent made a decision. So in Star Wars Unlimited, you are not able to do power fantasies. And because of that, the RNG in that game is very low as well. The combination of factors, but this is also one of the factors. In Riftbound, though, I didn't realize how much I was missing the power fantasies until I started playing again in games like where it's possible to do. In Riftbound, because you have normal turns and your opponent just tapped out and just left out everything in the open, now you can go wild. And you can do wild turns with, like, you know, you play Darius, you untap him, attack, then retreat, then replay him. Like, you have all of those cool options where you can do those power fantasies and go wild and do wild combos with 3 or 4 cards. Of course, like, I'm not saying that's possible right now in Riftbound because it's one expansion and probably you don't really have that many different combos, but the decision making can be uninterrupted, sorry, and because of that you are allowed to go wild and have those moments that are very memorable when you play the game. Now, when I played Star Wars Unlimited, I don't really have those moments in my head. I played the game for 2 years and I played in big tournaments. I had some wins, pretty good wins, and I cannot remember any of them because not in a single one of them there was like this memorable moment when something really cool happened. But in Riftbound, I know those situations will already be happening because the game allows them to happen. And I feel like that's something that I thought I wanted in card games, like to be lower in the past. Like, that's why I think Star Wars Limited is still best mechanical game from the games that I played. But I kind of miss those power fantasies. And because of that, I like the Riftbound system, at least for now, more. And that is a very cool thing. So I'm really looking forward in building decks that also are like, you know, high risk, high reward, popping off moments. And you're going to have those cool stories being built behind the game. In Valorant, I was being known for having hot takes, like a lot of controversial opinions that I was not afraid of voicing, even though it was met with a lot of opposition, pure hate, harassment, and so on. Somehow, after a few years, those opinions were typically true, because turns out I was right about something. And I feel like what I'm about to say about Riftbound right now is gonna be true in some time, but people will really dislike what I'm about to say. The thing that I really like about Riftbound is the fact that it's really hard to buy new sealed product right now. Now let me explain, okay? Because I know, they're gonna be booing and there's gonna be throwing tomatoes at me, and potatoes and so on. But the thing is, this is a really good problem to have. I would rather have this problem that we have 250 euros boxes that should be going for like 110 or 120 instead of boxes that are going for 35 euros or 35 euros if your Star Wars Unlimited. Like, I know the pain when you play a game that has worthless sealed product. And I'm gonna tell you one thing, that game slowly dies. Because Riftbound right now has this issue, it shows to me that the hype is real. And I see the connection. What I mean by that is I see the connection between low product, high price, and demand. If there would be no 20, 30, 50, 60 people on local tournaments, I would be worried. But what I see is huge amount of players and not enough product. That is a good problem to have. That is actually great because it showcases to us that we want to play the game. We want more production. But at the same time, it is a collectible card game. There needs to be artificial scarcity to some degree. And that degree has to be found between not too much and not too little. Because if you're gonna go into one of the other extremes, you're gonna have really big problems. If the sealed product will be overprinted, you're gonna have worthless cards. If you're gonna have worthless cards, the cards will not sell as much. Opening boxes will not be lucrative for for collectors or for the people who enjoy opening boxes and having cards that are actually worth something. Unfortunately, for many people, like, you know, they think that the game needs to be accessible because the cards need to be cheap. That only works in Pokemon, because 99.9% of the player base there is not actually players. They are collectors. Pokemon is in a league of its own. There's just so many people collecting that they're just cracking boxes all the time. So every other card is just being flooded in the market that is only being used for tournament play. That is not the reality with any other card game. That is not the reality with Flesh and Blood. That is not the reality with Star Wars Unlimited, definitely. That is not the reality with Magic as well. Well, okay, maybe to some degree. But the point is that I'm trying to make. It's good that we have this scale of the problem than the other one. Because if we would have so much product that it would be staying on the shelves for the next years, people would not be as interested. It's one of the things that is actually drawing attention to the game, that it's so expensive. I know, hate me for it, what I'm saying. But it's good for the game, you have to believe me. We're gonna have reprints, we're gonna have another waves, and I hope that Riot delivers enough product, just enough product, to make everyone satisfied with amount of product that they can buy from the shelf, but the price of the boxes should never go below 100 euros. That is incredibly important for the longevity of the game. It cannot be overprinted to the ground. It has to stay at a relevant price when it comes to economics, because otherwise people will lose interest. That's just how it works. People like if they play with something that has value. People like when the collections have value other than just emotional value. It's just how CCGs work. And if you need a very, blunt example, not a single living card game has a success over a decade, 20 years, history. They just don't work. They don't work because no one wants to buy living card games where you know what you're buying in a pack and you just get everything. That's just not the draw. The collectible card games have this unique aspect of just being, kinda those small artworks, like just the retro NFTs. It's like, that's something that people like. The ownership and the value, and also then the fact that we can play with this valuable thing that we have here. So yeah, I think this is a good problem to have, and hopefully it will not be as extreme in the future. But I think for the first expansion that we have over here, this is a great sign for the game, and I hope that Riot doesn't crank up the printers to the max and doesn't overprint the second and the third expansion. Now, to give you an example, what happened with Star Wars Unlimited, the first expansion of Star Wars Unlimited was underprinted for the demand. Very similar to what is happening currently in Riftbound. So we had similar situation. Like, for example, the Darth Vader, who was in the first expansion, Sparks of Rebellion, was such a staple in villain decks, so like half of the population, let's say, that the normal version of that card, collectible, just a normal card, non-foil and so on, was like worth 75 euros. And it was in high demand. Everyone wanted one. Everyone wanted 3, actually, if they wanted to play it in a deck. And many other cards were as valuable, Like, there were orders with 50 euros, 40 euros, and there was just not enough to go around. Specifically in US, that was a problem, because the game is much more popular in US than in Europe. But then the second expansion had a lower power level, and it was printed way higher. So we got more boxes, and the level of cards was lower, so the demand was lower, but also there was many more boxes. The third expansion was even worse. When it comes to the power level, it was probably still the worst expansion till today. Twilight of the Imperium, that was the name of it, and the price of it plummeted instantly. Right now, you can buy a box of Twilight of the Imperium and the second box, which is Shadows of the Empire. You can buy them for 33 and 35 euros. When you should buy them on the shelf when they were new for around like 90 to 100. People were losing businesses over this because they ordered, like they were thinking they're ordering because they were always like delivered less boxes than they should have because they ordered like 100 of Sparks of Rebellion, got 10 of it. They ordered 200 of Shadows, they got 50 of it. So they over demanded the Twilights of the Imperium, ordered like 1,000 boxes, got 1,000 boxes. No one wanted to buy 1,000 boxes of Twilight of Imperium, so the stores just closed. Many stores do not have Star Wars Unlimited anymore because they lost money over it. And I hope that's not gonna happen with Riftbound. And that's something that I'm happy to see, that the first expansion has this kind of problem, because if the game is gonna be managed well, we're gonna have more stabilized position on second and third expansion, hopefully. And because of that, the game is gonna be growing in a healthy direction. So I just hope we don't get overprinted and we don't get underprinted. But if I were to have to choose which problem to have, I would say underprint, because it's better than it's a high demand and low product quantity than the other way around, and the cards are essentially worth nothing. Now, next topic, let's talk about quality, like physical quality of the cards. First, positives. Paper. Holy shit, it's thick. Like when I started playing One Piece TCG, I was enamored by how thick the paper feels, and it's just so nice to shuffle, so nice to feel even in the sleeves. It's just awesome. And because of the paper, I think the foiling could also be more aggressive, and it didn't bend the cards that much, even though it still bends a little bit, but it doesn't bend that much because the paper is so thick. And now Riftbound has even thicker paper. Now, I cannot really show you this maybe that much on camera, but I'll try. So this is a Star Wars Unlimited card, which is essentially the same as Flesh and Blood and Magic the Gathering. Look how thick the paper is. I can almost do it invisible in front of my face, right? It's very thin, very thin. Now I'm gonna take One Piece card, right? This is the Star Wars Unlimited. Look at this. Now this is a One Piece card. Look at this. Right? And now I'm gonna take a Riftbound card, and even from the side here on camera you can literally see the fucking difference. It's so big, it's incredible. The paper on this, it's the best quality paper I have seen on any card game yet. Even better, what is the anime one? Oh my god, I forgot the name of it. Grand Palace? No. There's a small community in my hometown that plays it. Can't remember it. But they also had a nice piece of paper, and it was like a foiled backside of the card, which is kind of bonkers. Anyway, but the point is, this is the thickest one. And it feels great. It feels, when it comes to like just flicking the cards, just shuffling them even without any kind of sleeves, just feels awesome, and it feels just good to play with them. They make this nice riffling sound. It's fucking gorgeous. So that's fantastic, and it's good for the game. They have to keep it, because like if you change it, then the cards will be different and you cannot mix them in a deck. So it should stay exactly the same way. Now the problem is though that some of the cards have like this annoying, let me find some really egregious examples. They have this problem with being cut unevenly. Oh, I think this Kaisar, yeah, this one has a big problem. Right here, look at this corner. You see this small white thingy over here? This is a uncut piece of paper on top of the card. It's very rough, and you can literally feel it underneath your finger. So this problem with the cutting is apparently because the paper is so thick, and they're gonna fix it for some future episodes, for future expansions, but it's not gonna happen fast because the second expansion is probably already printed, so is the third one. But hopefully starting from the fourth one, we're gonna have that fixed. But overall, this is not that big of a deal when it comes to the cuts on the cards, because it doesn't appear on the very expensive cards, at least from my experience. So you're gonna have this problem with like commons and uncommons, some rares, but not every single one of them. And when it comes to like the alt arts and showcases, you're gonna have really good edges anyway. So yeah, the quality is questionable now, but the paper is for sure awesome, and hopefully it's gonna be changed in the future when it comes to the technique that they use for cutting it. I also wanted to acknowledge the problem with the booster packs when it comes to what do you get inside of it. And that is a big problem. And it's good that Riot already acknowledged it, that some of the booster packs don't have 2 rares, but even more egregious is the example that you can get a booster pack that has only 1 rare, but that rare is actually a champion, a legend, which is basically worthless. So if you're a child, you know, like a teenager who can buy like a 1 booster pack per week, literally me like 30 years ago, you know, it's like if you buy a pack like this and you open nothing in it because it's a mess pack, it really feels bad. Like that is a moment that I don't envy anyone. You know, it's like it's a terrible problem with the product. And good that they acknowledge it and that you can request a rare. You can do that with the website, but the problem is not many people will know it. The casuals will probably not know it. Maybe they will not even open the booster pack at the shop, so the clerk cannot tell them that it is fixable and you can just request it from the Riot website or OVS website. So I think this is a big problem, and fortunately it's acknowledged, it's to some degree fixable, and it's gonna be fixed for I think 4th or 3rd expansion. So, but yeah, I wanted to acknowledge it. This is a big problem, but it is questionable quality assurance, just like with the cutting, just like this one. And I think this is a big problem, but hopefully it's easy fix for the future expansions, apart from the second one, because I already confirmed that it's going to be a problem with the second one as well. So far, I have been very positive in this video, which is not like me. I typically complain all the time. So now let's go to my strong suit, start complaining. The thing that I dislike about Riftbound the most is something that I already had in other card games. Back in the day when I started playing Hearthstone, one of my biggest grievances with the game, one of the biggest things that grinded my gears, was the fact that reading the card didn't explain the card. Like for example, Ysera, who is a card that was in the first expansion of Hearthstone, said, create dream cards. The fuck is a dream card? No one knew. You had to play, you would have to craft Ysera, spend cash on that card, play that card, see what it does, and still not to be sure like what it actually did. Because there were multiple dream cards, and you actually at the beginning of the game no one knew how many were there. Was that like one super rare that was only being done 1 out of 1,000 times or something like that? We never knew. You would have to play it and see how it goes. So I remembered this because many of the cards that I started reading in Riftbound, I was like also like scratching my head, what the hell is going on? For example, here we have Set. Set says, spend my buff, give me +4 might this turn. But you know, it's like there are many cards like this, and there was some with no explanation. Like what the hell is a buff? It's with a small letter. Is that a keyword? Is it like a physical thing? Is that a different card? It's like when you start playing the game, this kind of wording doesn't really make it easier for you to learn the card game better. Like in general, the wording on the cards is pretty rough, and even for, let's say, seasoned veterans of card games, it will be very like confusing a lot of times when you're reading cards in Riftbound and you actually want to apply it in the game. So there's a lot of clarifications needed, and that's also why 30 cards that we had in this game already had an errata before even the game got released. Now, I do understand that the game was rushed to the market because the players demanded it. Not sure if you guys remember, but the game was not meant to be released in Europe and in NA. It was meant only to be in China. But everyone was like, what the hell? We want this cool thing in our homes as well. So Riot was, well, why shouldn't we get money? So let's print it in Europe and America. And I'm very happy they did, because the game is fucking awesome. So I feel like this wording got a little bit rushed and wasn't fully thought through. And that is also visible in actual rules mechanic and how they are being explained. And the game in general is really complex. Not in the good way, but actually when we actually get to know the game and we'll learn it along, like, you know, in the years to come, we're gonna really appreciate how complex it is. But right now it's overwhelming and confusing, and because there's no really good way of explaining the rules in many cases, Many players will not understand why something works like it works. Like the reflexive triggers on Falling Star and Icathian Rain is completely different from, let's say, auto removal, spot removals that you have. The fact that there are 3 or even 4 different types of speed of card that you can use is also very confusing because they don't follow nomenclature. The fact that we can have, like, you know, like a card like an Orb of Regret, for example, can be used during your turn, but not during showdowns. But it only has a tap symbol. And that's it. So it's like, you're not actually certain what the hell is this. Because, okay, so it's not an action, but it's a gear, so you just play it. But does that mean that I cannot tap it during showdown? You have no clue. Because we don't know, it's not consistent. The way that it's being described, the cards are not being super consistent. It would be nice if the speed of cards would be consistently named, so you would instantly know if something is a, you know, only during your turn and not during the showdown. So it would be like slow speed, right? Is it like normal speed, so you can play it as an action, right? And is it a reaction or anything else? Right now it's super confusing. The stack in combats is actually very satisfying to play, but it requires a lot of communications, and people will struggle in the beginning to understand the way it works as well. And because of that, the game will have a lot of problems in the early stages when it comes to upholding rules. Many people will just not know the rules, and we already have seen this during the Las Vegas tournament. Many people had no idea how the cards work, even though they're playing it for weeks, because they played it even before the, you know, the release. But then you see someone use 2 action spells during a reaction phase, like when you couldn't play an action, and you're like just scratching your head like, what's going on here? Why is also like no one noticing this? You know, there's like a lot of instances like that. Someone there was a Kai'Sa player who didn't want to play a removal card because he thought Assault gives +3 might, but it was an open showdown, so the Assault didn't actually trigger. So he could play a removal to kill a unit, but he didn't want to because he thought he's not gonna kill the creature because he didn't have enough damage. There's like a lot of things that are very convoluted. For the first expansion, I would tell you this: I think this is the most complex game when it comes to the first expansion of a new game. Typically how it works in other card games, not only they work on a very long time for proper wording on the cards to write the rules, but also the first expansion is not really that complicated when it comes to mechanics. Right now, I think this card game is actually pretty nuts when it comes to how complicated some of the mechanics are, and that is a very steep learning curve. And I don't mind this if this would be followed by really tightly written rulebook and good wording on the cards and good nomenclature and also good iconography. Right now, it's not the best. Let's say it this way. I hope that this will be tightened up in the future expansions, when there's gonna be more unity in the way that the cards are described and also like showcased design wise, because I think there's space to improve here. The next thing I'm gonna mention that I don't like, and it's also tied to the rules, is something that can accidentally make someone cheat and or just allow someone to cheat on purpose as well. For example, with the runes, you can tap them and recycle them at any point of the game as you wish to float mana. Which also, by the way, I think should be required to note with tokens, that how much mana do you have floating and how much power do you have floating, because you can do it at the beginning of the round and then think about what you're gonna do, and after some time passes, maybe your opponent will be confused what exactly you did before, and then you can just say, oh yeah, wait, but I floated more than I actually did, you know? So I think it should be required to symbolize the float of both mana, the power, and the runes actual energy with tokens if you float them. I think that should be written into the rules. But also, because you can recycle them at the bottom of the deck at any given point of the round, there can be weird situations. For example, I want to play Possession. That requires to have 3 power recycled, right? 3 runes recycled. But according to the rules, I have to first tap, then recycle, right? And then play the card, show it even from my hand after that. So what does it do is, for example, I can tap the mana, I can tap the 8 runes, and then hide some runes under the deck as a recycle, and then start thinking, wait, maybe I'll play a different card. Okay, then maybe I'll just go back and I recycle back that card, because I actually want to do only, you know, instead of 3 that I want to play on the possession, I actually want to play a card with only 1. So sorry, I made a mistake. I'm just gonna put the 2 runes back. Like, the intent is there because you should be allowed to do that warp back, because there was no different information being conveyed in the turn. So no judge will tell you like you cannot do that. You'll get a warning maybe, but you know, you can do that. And also not a single player will also allow you to do that unless they're an asshole, because there was no more information given. So it's just like you can't change your mind during your own decision, right? So you didn't hurt anyone, but it does allow shady play potentially. Now, what I think should be done is just that you announce your decision first. I want to play possession, and then I tap the runes, and then I recycle the runes, and then the card gets played. But I want the intention to be visible instantly, so everyone exactly knows how many runes do you need to tap and how many power runes you have to recycle, because that is good for the clarity of the game and competitive integrity. And when it comes to that, there's like a lot of that's a content for a completely different video. But in general, those screws need to be tightened. If we want this game to be a very, very competitive game, and I hope we want to, because that's what I want, and I hope you guys share my vision as well for the game, I want this to be played by the rules. I want the cheating to be as minimal as possible, and I want it to be clear on what is happening in the game, because with so many recycle like effects on the runes, there's a constant change of how much mana you have. It's very hard to keep track on how much mana opponents have at all the time, because it's always changing. So you have to be really like actually fucking paying attention to what's going on the board to not get cheated by someone on purpose or accidentally. And because those rules are not yet fully thought through, I think we have a lot of like shady areas, gray areas that can be abused by some bad actors, or just essentially just mistakes because people are new at the game, and that is fine, by the way. But I think the developer of the game, so Riot Games, should sit down, get feedback from the most competitive players that are, you know, going to the big tournaments and have also like some reputation, to ask them what could be improved when it comes to the rules themselves, wordings, and so on. For example, as well, there's a rule with the mulligan, and I learned that from Duo, from the Polish scene, from the Flesh and Blood player, because I was like, what the hell? What are you talking about? This is not a good rule. And he said, yeah, I think so as well. That when you sideboard, you have to say how many cards you exchange. Instead of showing how many cards you have in the sideboard at the end of sideboarding, you have to tell how many cards you change. It's really idiotic. And also the fact that you cannot get more than 40 cards into your deck after the sideboarding is a really weird decision, but that is like we can discuss that. But in general, you should just only be required to show how many cards you have in your sideboard after sideboarding, and you should not be required to say how many cards you exchange. How this gonna be even upheld by a judge or something? Like, what if I tell, oh, I sideboarded 8 cards? Okay, so the opponent goes, what the hell? This guy has so many techs against my deck. All right, better maybe change my decision a little bit here about how I play the game. But actually, I didn't change a single card, and I just lied. How this can be upheld to any kind of like scrutiny? It's misinformation for no reason. So I don't like this at all. But anyway, this is my biggest gripe with the game. I think the loosey-goosey rules and the not the best wording can be vastly improved, and I hope in the near future, like a year, maybe maximum 2, we can get this comprehensive rule guide to be written in a much better way that will be also followed by a small redesign of the wording and the iconography on the cards to follow tightly written rules. Stop! You reached the end of my first ever Riftbound video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, leave a comment saying, I didn't enjoy your video, it's shit. If you did enjoy it though, leave a comment, I enjoyed your video a little bit, it's not pure shit. Bye.